5 women lay lifeless, their bodies sprawled across the floor in unnatural positions. Their eyes were wide open, frozen in terror, as if they had seen something unspeakable before their last breath. In the corner of the room, 3 small children, 2 boys and a girl, lay motionless, their tiny hands clutching their toys as if they had simply fallen asleep. But they would never wake up again. The only sound was the slow, heavy breathing of a man standing in the middle of the room. His name was Kola Adebayo, a once charming Yahoo boy who had made his fortune scamming lonely women online. His hands trembled as he stared at the destruction around him. His wife, his mistresses, his children, all gone. His lips moved, whispering a single word, "Why?" But the answer would not come. Before the blood, before the screams, before the curse that would claim them all, Kola was just a young man from a poor neighborhood with big dreams. He had grown up in Achagunle, where life was hard and money was scarce. His mother worked as a market trader, struggling to feed him and his siblings. Kola hated poverty. He hated seeing his mother cry at night when she thought no one was listening. One day, his friend Emeka introduced him to the world of Yahoo, online scams targeting wealthy foreign women. At first, Kola hesitated. He knew it was wrong. But then he remembered his mother's tired eyes, his empty stomach, and the hopelessness that clung to his life like a shadow. If these women are foolish enough to fall in love with a stranger online, then they deserve to lose their money, Emeka had said with a laugh. Kola took his first victim 6 months later. Her name was Linda, a divorced American woman desperate for love. He played his role perfectly: sweet messages, fake promises of marriage, and tearful stories about needing money for his sick mother. Linda sent him $5,000. The rush was intoxicating. For the first time in his life, Kola felt powerful. 1 scam turned into 10. 10 turned into 50. Soon, Kola was living in a luxury apartment, driving expensive cars, and wearing designer clothes. He was no longer the poor boy from Ajagunla. He was a king. But kings always fall. His downfall began the day he met Amara. She was different from the others, smarter, sharper. She didn't send money easily. Instead, she demanded to meet him in person. Kola should have walked away. But Amara was beautiful, with deep brown eyes and a smile that made his heart race. He fell for her, hard. "I'm done with scams," he told her one night, holding her close. "I want a real life with you." Amara smiled. "Prove it." So Kola married her. He even had children with her, 2 boys and a girl. He thought he had escaped his past, but the past never forgets. One by one, the women he had scammed started appearing in Lagos. Some came looking for revenge. Others came because they truly believed he loved them. They called his phone, showed up at his house, screamed at him in public. Amara found out. "You lied to me!" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You used me like you used them!" Kola tried to explain, to apologize, but the damage was done. Amara's love turned to hate, and hate, as Kola would soon learn, could be deadly. One night, after a terrible fight, Amara locked herself in the bedroom. Kola heard her whispering in a language he didn't understand. The next morning, she was gone. But she had left something behind, a curse. And now, as Kola stood in that silent, blood-stained apartment, he realized, too late, that some sins could never be forgiven. Kola stumbled back, his breath ragged, as the reality of what had just happened crashed over him like a tidal wave. The bodies of the women, his wife, his lovers, and his own children lay still, their lifeless eyes staring right through him. His hands shook violently, his mind refusing to accept that this was real. "No! No, no, no!" he screamed, falling to his knees. But the silence swallowed his cries. Then, a sound, a whisper. It came from the hallway, soft, eerie, like wind slipping through cracks. Kola's blood turned to ice. He wasn't alone. Slowly, he turned his head, his heart pounding so hard he thought it would burst. There, in the shadows, stood a figure. Small, frail. A child? But when the figure stepped into the dim light, Cola's breath caught in his throat. It was his youngest daughter, Ada, alive. Her tiny hands clutched her favorite doll, her big eyes filled with tears. But something was wrong. Her skin was too pale, her lips too blue, and when she spoke, her voice wasn't her own. "Daddy, you did this," Cola recoiled. "Ada? No, baby, I didn't." "You lied," she whispered, her voice twisting into something unnatural. "You hurt them. Now we all hurt." Then, before his eyes, Ada's skin began to darken, cracks spreading like spiderwebs across her face. Her doll dropped to the floor, its head snapping off. Cola screamed, and the lights went out. 3 months earlier. Cola had thought he was untouchable. After marrying Amara and starting a family, he had tried to leave his old life behind. But the past had claws. One evening, as he played with his children in their lavish living room, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. "You think you can just disappear, Cola?" The voice on the other end was female, cold, laced with venom. Cola's stomach dropped. He knew that voice. "Sarah?" Sarah, one of the first women he had scammed years ago. She had been different from the others. Obsessed. When he ghosted her, she had sent him hundreds of messages, threatening to find him. And now, she had. "I'm in Lagos," she hissed, "and I'm not leaving until I ruin your life like you ruined mine." Cola hung up, sweat dripping down his back. That night, he told Amara they needed to move. "Why?" she demanded, eyes narrowing. "What did you do?" "Nothing," he lied. "I just got a better job offer in Port Harcourt." Amara didn't believe him. She never did. But before they could leave, more women came. Messages, calls, strange figures lurking outside their home. Then, the nightmares started. Cola would wake up gasping, certain someone was in the room. His children began crying at night, saying a bad woman was watching them. Amara grew distant, spending hours locked in their bedroom, whispering to herself. When Cola asked what she was doing, she would just smile. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Protecting us," she said. But from what? Then one day, Cola came home to find Amara kneeling in the middle of their bedroom, surrounded by strange markings on the floor. Candles flickered, casting eerie shadows. In her hands was a small, grotesque doll wrapped in black cloth. "What the hell is this?" Cola demanded. Amara looked up, her eyes hollow. "You brought this on us," she said softly. "Now, I'm making sure they can't hurt our children." Cola didn't understand. Not then. But he would. Because that night, the first woman died. Present day. Cola bolted upright in bed, gasping for air. It had been a dream. A horrible, vivid dream. But when he turned, his relief shattered. Amara's side of the bed was empty, and on the pillow lay a single black feather. Cola's fingers trembled as he picked up the black feather, his mind racing. It was too real, too deliberate to be a coincidence. The air in the room felt heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on him. He threw off the covers and rushed out of the bedroom, his bare feet slapping against the cold marble floor. "Amara?" he called, his voice echoing through the dark house. No answer. The children's rooms were empty, no toys scattered on the floor, no soft breathing from their beds. Just silence. A terrible, suffocating silence. Panic clawed at his chest as he stumbled down the hallway, his heart hammering. The living room was untouched, the expensive furniture, the large TV, the family photos on the wall. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. Then he saw it. A single drop of blood on the kitchen floor. Fresh. His breath hitched. His body moved on its own, following the trail, one drop then another, leading him to the back door. It was slightly ajar, the night air slipping in like a whisper. Cola pushed it open and stepped outside. The backyard was bathed in moonlight, the tall grass swaying gently in the breeze. And there, in the center, stood Amara. She was dressed in white, her hair loose and wild, her arms raised toward the sky. At her feet lay a slaughtered chicken, its blood forming strange symbols in the dirt. Kola's stomach twisted. Amara, what the hell are you doing? She didn't turn, didn't even flinch. Then, in a voice that didn't sound like hers, deeper, rougher, she spoke. They're coming, Kola, and when they arrive, they will take everything. A gust of wind howled through the yard, extinguishing the candles around her. The shadows seemed to stretch, reaching for him. Kola took a step back, fear gripping him like a vice. Where are the kids? Amara finally turned to face him, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Her eyes were completely black. Gone, she whispered, just like you will be. Then, behind her, the darkness moved. Figures emerged from the shadows, women, dozens of them. Their faces were familiar. Sarah, Linda, Esther, all the women he had scammed, all the women he had betrayed. But their eyes were just like Amara's, empty, hungry. Kola turned to run, but something grabbed his ankle. A skeletal hand bursting from the earth, its bony fingers digging into his flesh. He screamed as more hands erupted from the ground, pulling him down, down, down into the dirt. The last thing he saw before the earth swallowed him whole was Amara smiling. And then, darkness. The knocking had started 3 nights ago. Soft at first, just a faint tap, tap, tap at the front door. Kola had ignored it, thinking it was the wind. But then it grew louder, more insistent. By the 4th night, the knocking came from inside the house. Kola had searched every room, every closet, but found nothing. Amara had simply watched him, her expression unreadable. You hear that, right? He had asked, desperate for confirmation. She had only smiled. They're here for you, Kola, not me. Now, as he sat in his office, staring at his computer screen, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You can't hide forever. He deleted it, his hands shaking. Then his computer screen flickered. A video popped up on its own, a live feed of his children's bedroom. His breath caught. There, standing over their beds, was a woman in a tattered white dress. Sarah. She turned toward the camera and smiled. I found them. The screen went black. Kola shot up from his chair, his heart pounding. He had to get home. Now. But when he flung open his office door, the hallway stretched endlessly before him, longer than it should have been, and at the far end, a figure stood waiting, watching, laughing. Kola gasped awake, his body drenched in sweat. He was back in his bed, the morning sun streaming through the windows. Amara lay beside him, sleeping peacefully. Had it all been a nightmare? Then he looked down. Clutched in his hand was a single black feather, and on his ankle, 5 faint finger-shaped bruises. The bruises on Kola's ankle throbbed as he stood under the scalding shower, trying to wash away the dread clinging to his skin. The water turned pink as it swirled down the drain. Tiny scratches he didn't remember getting covered his arms. Just a nightmare, he muttered, scrubbing harder. But the feather was still there, tucked under his pillow like a threat. Breakfast was silent. Amara moved around the kitchen, humming, her back to him, flipping pancakes like it was any other morning. The kids chattered excitedly about school, their voices too loud in Kola's ears. Daddy, you look sick, his son said, staring. Kola forced a smile. Just tired, champ. Amara turned then, her eyes locking onto his. For a second, he thought he saw something flicker in them, something dark. Then she blinked, and it was gone. You should rest today, she said sweetly. Too sweetly. The doorbell rang. Kola jumped, his fork clattering onto his plate. Amara didn't react, just kept smiling. Aren't you going to answer it? She asked. Every muscle in his body screamed no, but he stood anyway, walking to the door like a man heading to the gallows. Through the peephole, the porch was empty. He exhaled, shaky with relief, until he looked down. A package wrapped in black cloth sat on the welcome mat. No label, no address. His hands shook as he picked it up. The fabric fell away, revealing a small wooden box carved with strange symbols. The moment his fingers touched the lid, a sharp pain shot up his arm, like something inside had bit him. He dropped it with a yelp. The box hit the floor and sprung open. Inside was a photograph. Him, standing over the bodies of his family, a knife in his hand. "What the—" The image moved. His photo self turned, looked straight at him, and grinned. Kola recoiled, slamming the box shut. His heart pounded so hard his vision blurred. "Amara!" he shouted, stumbling back into the house. But the house was empty, no plates on the table, no laughter, no kids, just silence. And on the kitchen counter, a single note in Amara's handwriting: "You should have stayed gone." The priest had refused to help. "This is beyond me," the old man said, backing away as Kola showed him the photos on his phone. The strange marks on his children's arms, the shadows in the corners of his house that moved when no one was looking. "She's doing something to us," Kola pleaded. "My wife. She's not herself." The priest made the sign of the cross. "If what you say is true, this is no ordinary curse. She has invited something in, and it is feeding." "How do I stop it?" The priest hesitated. "You don't. You run." Kola's phone buzzed in his pocket. A video from an unknown sender. He didn't want to look. He had to look. The footage was shaky, dark. Then a flashlight flicked on, revealing a basement he didn't recognize. Amara stood in the center, chanting. Around her, arranged in a circle, lay 7 women. Their chests rose and fell. They were alive. But their eyes were open, wide, terrified. And in front of each woman a small bowl filled with dark liquid. Amara lifted a knife. "For blood there must be blood," she whispered to the camera. "No, to him." Then the screen cut to a live feed. His children, bound, gagged. And behind them, a figure stepped into the frame. Not Amara, not anymore. Its smile stretched too wide, its eyes black pits. "Come find us, Kola," it crooned in Amara's voice, "before we finish what you started." The call ended. Kola's legs gave out. He had one thought, one desperate, screaming thought. What has she done? The basement smelled like wet earth and copper, thick, metallic, sticking to the back of Kola's throat as he crept down the rotting wooden steps. The video's coordinates had led him here, to this abandoned house on the outskirts of Lagos, where the trees bent like crooked fingers and the air hummed with something unnatural. His phone's flashlight flickered, threatening to die, but he didn't dare turn back. Not now. Not when the muffled cries of his children still echoed in his ears from that damned video. Tap, tap, tap. A sound from the shadows. Kola froze. Something was down here with him. The beam of his light trembled as he swept it across the room, illuminating rusted chains, broken jars, and oh God, the women. They hung from the ceiling like macabre puppets, their wrists bound with rope, their heads slumped forward. But they weren't dead. Their chests rose and fell in ragged breaths, their fingers twitching as if trapped in a nightmare. And beneath each of them, a shallow bowl of dark liquid. Blood. Kola's stomach lurched. He recognized them: Sarah, Linda, Esther, all the women he'd scammed, all the women he'd thought were gone. But they weren't just victims anymore. They were part of this. A low, guttural laugh echoed through the basement. "You came." Kola spun around. Amara stood at the foot of the stairs, but no, not Amara. Her skin was too pale, stretched too tight over her bones. Her lips curled back in a grin that showed too many teeth, and her eyes, black, all black. "You shouldn't have run from us, Kola," she purred, stepping closer. "Now look what you've made me do." She gestured to the far corner of the room. Kola's breath stopped. His children sat huddled together, their small bodies trembling, their mouths stitched shut with coarse black thread. "No!" Kola lunged forward, but Amara moved faster, unnaturally fast, her hand snapping out to grip his throat. She tutted, her voice layered with something deeper, something ancient. "No touching." Kola choked, clawing at her fingers, but her grip was iron. "You took from them," she hissed, nodding to the hanging women. "Their money, their love, their lives. Now they take from you." One by one, the women's heads lifted, their eyes opened, black, just like hers. Kola's vision blurred as the air grew thick, suffocating. Shadows slithered across the floor, curling around his legs like serpents. Amara leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. "Say goodbye, Kola." A scream tore through the basement, but it wasn't his. It was theirs. The women, the children, Amara. A blinding light erupted from the center of the room, and for a single terrifying second, Kola saw it, the thing wearing his wife's skin, the thing that had been feeding on his sins, its true form. Then darkness. Kola's body hit the damp basement floor with a thud as the unnatural grip around his throat released. Gasping for air, he rolled onto his side, his vision swimming. The blinding light had vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving only the flickering glow of his dying phone light. The women still hung from the ceiling, but now their heads lolled lifelessly, their chests still. The bowls beneath them had shattered, the dark liquid seeping into the dirt floor like ink. And Amara. She was gone. A whimper cut through the silence. Kola's head snapped toward the sound. His children. They were still huddled in the corner, their small bodies shaking, the grotesque black threads through their lips glistening in the dim light. He scrambled toward them on hands and knees, his fingers fumbling to pull at the stitches. Hold on, he choked out, nails tearing at the threads. The moment the first stitch snapped, his youngest daughter, Ada, let out a piercing scream, not of pain, but of warning. "Daddy, behind you!" Kola turned just in time to see the shadows move. They slithered across the floor, converging into a swirling mass of darkness that rose like a wave, taking shape a woman, but not Amara. This thing wore Sarah's face, her mouth stretched into a grin too wide for a human skull. "You thought it was over?" she crooned, her voice layered with dozens of others, Linda's, Esther's, all the women he'd betrayed. "We're just getting started." The basement walls began to bleed. Kola grabbed his children, shielding them with his body as the room trembled. The hanging corpses jerked violently against their ropes, their limbs twitching as if pulled by invisible strings. Then a whisper, right against his ear, a voice he knew too well. "Kola! Amara!" But when he turned, there was no one there. Only his reflection in a shattered piece of glass on the floor, except it wasn't his reflection. It was her. Smiling. "Run," the reflection mouthed. And for once, Kola listened. Scooping up his children, he bolted for the stairs as the basement erupted behind him, a chorus of screams, the sound of snapping bones, the wet rip of flesh tearing. He didn't look back. Couldn't. Bursting through the front door, he stumbled into the night, his children clinging to him. The house behind him groaned, its windows shattering outward as a plume of black smoke poured into the sky. But the smoke wasn't dissipating. It was chasing them. Kola ran faster, his bare feet slapping against the muddy road, his lungs burning. He didn't know where to go, didn't know how to stop this. All he knew was one terrible truth. This wasn't just a curse anymore, it was a reckoning, and it wouldn't end until he and everyone he loved was gone. The night swallowed them whole as Kola ran through the tangled undergrowth, branches whipping at his face like skeletal fingers. His bare feet sank into the cold mud with each step, his arms burning from the weight of his children. Behind them, the black smoke twisted through the trees, always just a few paces back, never closer, never farther. It was playing with them. "Daddy, I'm scared," his son whimpered into his shoulder. Kola didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat was raw from screaming, from praying, from bargaining with a god he'd long since stopped believing in. The forest ahead seemed endless, the darkness between the trees shifting in ways that made his vision swim. Then a light. Faint at first, then brighter. A small wooden shack tucked between two massive iroko trees, its windows glowing warm yellow like a beacon. Kola hesitated. Nothing good waited in places like this, not out here where the world felt thin and wrong. But the children were shivering, their tiny fingers turning blue from cold, or fear, or something worse. The door creaked open before he could knock. An old woman stood framed in the doorway, her face a map of deep wrinkles, her eyes milky white with blindness. Yet she stared right at him through him, as if she could see every sin he'd ever committed. "Come in, Yahoo boy," she rasped, "before they see you." The hairs on Kola's neck stood up. He'd never told her what he was. Inside, the shack smelled of herbs and something metallic. Dried plants hung from the ceiling, their shadows dancing like hanged men in the flickering candlelight. The old woman shuffled to a low table where a cracked mirror lay covered by a black cloth. "Sit," she commanded, pointing to the children. They clung to Kola, trembling. The old woman sighed. "If you want them to live past tonight, you will do as I say." Kola's knees hit the dirt floor before he realized he'd moved. "Please, help us." She lifted the cloth from the mirror. The glass didn't show their reflections. Instead, it showed Amara, or what used to be Amara, standing in their empty living room, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Behind her, the walls pulsed like living flesh. "She is not your wife anymore," the old woman said. "That thing wore her skin until it grew strong enough to walk on its own. Now it hunts what's left of her soul and yours." Kola's stomach turned to ice. "Why?" The old woman pressed a gnarled finger to the mirror. The image shifted, showing a younger Kola sitting at a computer, grinning as he typed lies to a woman named Sarah. Then Linda. Then Esther. Dozens more. "You broke them," she whispered. "So they broke the rules. Called something older than blood to settle the debt." Outside, the wind howled. The candles flickered. The old woman grabbed Kola's wrist, her nails drawing blood. "There is only one way this ends. You must." The mirror shattered. The children screamed. And the door exploded inward. The door didn't just open, it burst apart like rotten fruit, splinters embedding themselves in the walls as the darkness poured in. Not smoke anymore. Not shadows. Something solid. Kola threw himself over his children as the candles snuffed out, plunging the shack into blackness. The old woman's voice cut through the dark like a knife. "Say their names." For a heartbeat, he didn't understand. Then it hit him. The women. All of them. His mouth filled with the taste of copper as he screamed, "Sarah! Linda! Esther!" The darkness recoiled. A sliver of moonlight pierced through the ruined door, illuminating the thing standing there. Amara, but not Amara. Her skin peeled back like burned paper, revealing the hollow darkness beneath. The voices of a dozen women spilled from her gaping mouth as she staggered forward. "You don't get to say our names," the thing wearing Amara's face hissed. The old woman grabbed Kola's shoulder, her nails drawing blood. "Again! Louder!" Kola's voice broke as he shouted every name he remembered, every woman he'd tricked, every life he'd ruined. With each name, the thing flinched its form, flickering like a dying light bulb. But it kept coming. Closer. Closer. Until its rotting fingers brushed his son's cheek. The old woman moved. She plunged her hand into the thing's chest, her arms sinking deep into the darkness as she yanked out a fistful of black threads, each one tied to a tiny writhing figure. The children's souls. The thing screeched, its body unraveling like a knotted rope as the old woman threw the threads into the shattered mirror. The glass swallowed them with a sound like a dying breath. For one terrible second, everything was silent. Then the shack exploded. Kola woke in a hospital bed, his body wrapped in bandages, his throat raw. The nurses said they'd found him in the forest, clutching his children to his chest. No shack, no old woman, just 3 survivors with no memory of how they'd escaped. But sometimes, late at night, Kola sees things. A shadow that moves too fast, a whisper that says his name, and in his dreams he's back in that basement, watching as the women rise not as monsters, but as they were before he ruined them. They don't speak. They just watch, waiting.